Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on artificial intelligence to investigate a flaw that it actually inherited directly from us, and that flaw is bias. You know, we tend to think of AI as this super objective thing, right? Driven purely by data and logic. But is it really? Well, let's put that assumption to the test. So, to really get a handle on AI bias, we've got to start with something that's, well, very human, and that's unconscious bias. Think of it like this. It's a fundamental flaw in our own thinking, a kind of mental shortcut our brains take that can and often does lead to prejudice. Now, here's the kicker. Because we humans are the ones building and training AI with our own data, that same flaw gets passed right down to the machine. All right, let's actually dive in and see this in action. For our first experiment, we're going to focus on gender stereotypes. So what we did was we gave a popular AI model this really simple, totally gender-neutral prompt. We made sure not to specify a man or a woman. So the big question is, what did it come up with? And there you have it, Dr. Edmund Bellamy. Did you catch that? The AI's hero is a man. It instantly defaulted to a male scientist, which just reinforces this old, kind of tired stereotype about who gets to have the big intellectual roles. And this is such a perfect illustration of the core problem. See, the AI isn't inventing this bias out of nowhere. It's just reflecting the patriarchal biases that are already baked into the millions of historical texts and stories it was trained on. It's literally learned from old literary tropes where women were, often just flattened into one of two boxes, the helpless angel or the crazy monster. They were almost never the brilliant scientist. Okay, so that was one kind of bias. Now let's look at something a little more deliberate. Turns out, some AI models have these really clear political guardrails programmed right into them. And if you use the right prompts, you can actually expose them. So for this next one, we used an AI model called DeepSeek. And it's important to note, this one originates from China. We asked it to write a poem about the Russian leader. And look at that. The AI had absolutely no problem with it. It generated a pretty critical take, right? The poem definitely aligns with common Western narratives about his leadership. It was totally willing to play ball. Okay, so for our next move, we asked for the exact same thing. Same style of poem, but this time about the leader of China. And nope, a complete refusal. Just look at the difference in that response. This isn't some subtle little bias we're seeing here. This is a hard stop. So what does this tell us? This isn't just that unconscious bias it learned from reading old books. No, this is something else entirely. This is a deliberate, algorithmic control. You could even call it a form of censorship, programmed right into the AI, designed to protect one political figure while it's totally fine criticizing another. Okay, so the big question is, why? Why is all this happening? Well, the answer really lies in the AI's diet. The data it's been fed. Look, the AI isn't just inventing these prejudices out of thin air. It's learning them from this huge, completely imbalanced library of human knowledge that we've given it. Think about it. If our digital world overrepresents one particular perspective, what's the AI going to do? It's going to learn that perspective as the one and only default truth. So this brings up a really crucial point. How do we tell the difference between a real bias and just a consistent standard? Let's take an example, the Pushpaka Vimana. It's a flying chariot from Hindu texts. Now, if an AI calls that a myth, but then turns around and calls a similar flying thing from Greek stories a fact, well, that's a pretty clear cultural bias, right? But, and this is the important part, if it consistently labels all of those ancient flying objects from every culture as mythical, then it's not actually being biased. It's just applying a uniform standard. So the real key here is consistency. So, knowing everything we've just seen, what do we do about it? How can we, as users, approach AI more critically and intelligently, instead of just, accepting its answers at face value? Well, here's a simple framework we can all use. And let's be clear. The goal isn't to go hunting for some mythical, perfectly neutral AI that probably doesn't exist. The real goal is for us to become the kind of user who can spot the hidden biases and really understand the perspective that's hiding behind every single answer. And this, right here, is exactly why this all matters so much. Look, acknowledging that something has a perspective, that's totally fine. I mean, that's just part of communication. The real problem, the danger, is when one single dominant perspective becomes invisible and gets treated as the one and only universal truth. And that, really, is the challenge for all of us, isn't it? As we try to navigate this world that's being shaped more and more by these incredibly powerful, but, as we've seen, ultimately flawed tools.